right, let's keep it simple, stupid America, invoking critical thinking, one thought, one question, or one rant at a time. I'm John Harley, 3 J's, 3 Y's, because the first 2 and 1 got canceled. And with me is conservative pink.
Conspiracy pink.
Oh, okay.
My gosh.
So, all right. Well, and it's now
Conspiracy pink 4.0.
4.0 because what happened to 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, they just get banned. You can't talk about real shit that's going on. So
Speaking the truth. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today that I think is going to kind of open up the subject for people is brainwashing, right? That's a term that we hear kind of like conspiracy, right? It's a term we hear, but gets knocked down by any mainstream media source, or if you mention the word conspiracy or you mention the word brainwashing, then automatically the public's taught to challenge that, right? So one of the things I think it's crazy is it's so outlandish for, us to second guess these things, right? Because we've had things in history. I'm going to put my glasses on because that's what happens when you get older. One of the things that you and I have talked a lot about is Project MK Ultra.
yes.
So, if you look it up on Wikipedia, it's a name of an illegal human experimentation program that was designed and undertaken by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. So here's a government entity, right, that is supposed to, protect us, right? That's what CIA is. We have a different thought on that, of who they are. But they are, so they ran an illegal operation that basically was, so just read experiments that were intended to develop procedures and identify drugs such as LSD that could be used as interrogation to weaken individuals and force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. So this is something that our government has done. Why do you think it is that people are so standoffish with this kind of subject when you start trying to talk about it?
Because they don't want to automatically be associated with somebody who might come across as too outspoken, crazy, a conspiracy theorist. They don't want to acknowledge the fact that somebody in that high of power could actually use it for bad against we the peasants.
And what's really interesting when you look up the word brainwashed, right, under the Webster Dictionary, it says a forcible indoctrination, we'll get back to that word, to induce someone to give up basic political, social, or religious beliefs and attitudes and to accept contrasting regimented ideas. So the second is persuasion by propaganda or salesmanship. What's crazy is all those words we hear all the time, right?
All the time.
So mainstream media is we look at propaganda, right? Mm-hmm. Because they force feed us everything that we hear, right? Mm-hmm. So you got 6 major networks that own 90% of all mainstream media, which we've all seen the video where you got 90 newscast people all saying the same thing, right? So when you talk about indoctrination, what does that mean to you?
Basically, it means to me that they are taking all of the information that we listen to, that we watch, that we learn, that we hear, and they are all giving subliminal messages. They're all giving the same subliminal messages through all of those sources and normalizing.
Right.
Normalizing that, teaching that, and making you feel almost safe in it, that if you are to question anything else other than what they're saying, that you are now the problem, not them.
Right. So kind of something you and I were talking about was like, 20, 30 years ago on TV, you go back to maybe Mary Tyler Moore or Dick Van Dyke shows or I Love Lucy. There was almost none, right? So you might have seen somebody give each other a peck on a cheek, maybe a hug, but that was it. And now, and during prime time, you have full-on sex scenes that have a boob shot at 7 o'clock on primetime TV, right? When your kid's sitting next to you, and they put on the warning, I guess, at the beginning of the show, and I guess that's your cue.
Yeah.
But we have to ask ourselves, why are we there? Why did we have to move into that to gain the attention of the public, right? So you look at the violent scenes, all the violence that happens on TV now. And yeah, some of it's so outlandish. You're like, okay, well, that's only happening because it's on TV. But it's doing what? It's doing something to our subconscious that's telling us that that's okay. So that kind of goes into the indoctrination side, right?
Right.
What I thought was interesting is it says to give up basic political, social, and religious views, right? And when you look at things that have been happening over the course of the last 2 or 3 decades, it's been an attack on people's political view, right? So right now, the whole country has been divided based on politics, right? And why was that? Because Trump came into office and they were able to use him to split everybody based on a political belief, right? And then you look at the social beliefs. I think that kind of goes back to what we were just talking about with, all these different things that have to always be in your face. Sex, violence, those different subjects people don't want to talk about. And then religious beliefs, I think, is something that's been being attacked for several decades, right? And it kind of goes into the fact of like now people who almost have religious beliefs are almost attacked and shamed for believing in God or believing in Jesus or whatever. And then it's your view can't matter because there's 10 other views out there. So you have to be quiet about yours. And then we get to talk about the ones that we want. So it's kind of like you were saying, make you feel almost shameful if you want to bring up what you're talking about. So one of the things that I think is interesting is the standoffishness with the words brainwashing or conspiracy. Why do you think it is that we have got to a point where people know it's true, but they're still willing to deny that? They're still willing to look at you like, just in your name, Conspiracy Pink, right? So they're automatically going to be standoffish with you. Right. And you even got your start on TikTok by talking about conspiracy theories, right?
Yes.
What was your main ones that really kind of propelled that?
Most of them were Hollywood. Most of them had to do with people that we look up to as idols. And people didn't like that. People didn't like that, you were out here talking about some things that you could easily find on the internet, but just weren't talked about. And people really like to challenge the fact that, oh no, this person would never do this. This person would never do that. We don't know these people. I mean, we don't know these people from Adam. We don't know what things are like behind closed doors. And in my opinion, a little bit of fame could potentially lead to doing evil acts in order to get that fame. And people don't want to acknowledge that.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because they think that given the opportunity, they would never do that. So why would that person? Or this person's a humanitarian, and they speak on, being vegan, and they speak on, saving animals and stuff like that. So why would they, worship the devil? Or why would they do the certain act in order to get fame and notoriety? That just doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense. But it could also be a smokescreen, and you are only seeing what they want you to see, and people cannot put the 2 and 2 together.
Do you think they don't want to put it together because then that kind of fractions their belief on that person or what they thought they were?
Absolutely. Because what they think they know of this person is what they see on the movies, on the screen. That is who they think they are on TV. And it is 100% not the fact. They are a professional actor or singer or, whatever their profession is for a reason. And yes, they may have had to have done some things to get to that point, but they are also still talented people, and they are going to make you believe what they want you to believe.
I think it's funny how we can have things that we know, like we know an actor is an actor, right? So they can get us to believe whatever they can act out in a way that draws us in, right?
Yeah.
So it's really strange that when we talk about this and bring this up, people get so standoffish about it when you dial it down to the basic fact that you're talking about an actor, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about, you kind of move that into politicians, right? So how many times do politicians tell us something that we want to hear, only to find out later that that was just a thing they said to get the vote, right?
Every 4 years.
So you talk about the Biden saying, oh, we're going to get rid of student loan debt, and then just the other day he's like, well, I really can't do anything about that. And then it's kind of like the COVID thing. It's a federal deal. They're going to come in and tell us all these things we got to do. And you had Biden run on the premise that he was going to eradicate COVID, right? His whole deal is elect me. I've got it all figured out. We're going to stop this thing.
And he was going to cure cancer.
Yeah, he's going to cure cancer. But just the other day, he's like, well, this isn't really a federal thing. This is more of a state thing. So
Exactly.
you guys are going to have to figure this out on your own. And then when you go back, you can find the clip of Trump saying that, hey, this should be handled on a state level. Every state's different. Their economies are different. Their way of lives are different. You have different variations in the cold, parts of the states. They don't have as many of the outbreak because whatever the case may be.
Right.
What I think is interesting, instead of listening to the words that are being spoke to us, we are told what to think about that person, and then we base that off of how we take their information, right? So, because what I just said was just their facts, right? So that is what Biden said. That is what Trump said. But in the setting of the world we live in today, I'm an insane Trump supporter, and then it's, to be fair, to flip that coin, then I'm like, you're a senile follower for Biden, right? Who can't put a word together or a sentence together.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is when we look at these things, how it is that we're being told how to interact with each other, and coerced how to respond to each other. And in reality, we're all sitting here wanting the same thing, right? We want our lives back. We want things to go back to normal. We want we want people that need help to get help. We want people that need medication to get medication. But we also want to move on with our lives, right?
Right. Yeah.
And one of the things that's always stuck out to me about the brainwashing deal, because I know that's a touchy word. I look at stuff like Google, right? So you look at all the data points that they have on you, and I think not too long ago I went to where you have your deal where you can actually download your profile. Mine was like 7.5 gigs. That's like 4 million, Word documents on how I think and what I look for, because Google knows where you've been. They know everything you've searched for and deleted. So you never get rid of it. Google has an advertisement profile on you. They know what apps you use. They know your YouTube history. They know Facebook keeps reams and reams of data on you. And you have to ask yourself why.
Well, the spyware is something that before I got into even considering conspiracies being a real thing, I used to talk about, I don't care if my phone can listen to what I'm saying because, I'm not saying anything illegal. So they can, I don't care if the government can hear me, whatever. I'm not doing anything illegal. So what does it matter? But now when I say that, that's probably one of the scariest thoughts that I could have had, is as a naive person who just was not open-minded to, well, yeah, maybe I'm not doing something illegal right now. But if they decide to change something down the line, such as, me being a Trump supporter, or me believing that, that there's no outer space, like thoughts like that could be illegal at some point in time. And depending on how far we let this go, yeah, that spyware shit is going to be a problem. And I don't think that they did it initially to do that. I think they did it for marketing purposes. I think that they did it so that, Facebook and Amazon and places like that could just get all the information on you that they could, so that they could market to you things and just put it out there for the consumer. And that's what the middle class is the consumers. And I mean, we live outside of our means all the time. And so that's what they're going to go to.
So I think it's interesting you say that, because, I think a lot of us have seen the the deal where the guy in the movie puts the glasses on and he's in Times Square and all the screens are saying "Buy me, consume."
That was one of the
You know,
scariest commercials I've ever seen.
that was really crazy because when you watch that, we have become a consumer driven society, and you're right. I think they started it initially with that, but they realized there's so much more they can do with that.
Yeah,
right?
they
Because
realized, oh my gosh, we
you
have
can really
this.
alter the way somebody thinks, and
Yeah.
the thing that I find so interesting with how we're being trained to think is when we sit down and we have conversations with somebody that let's just use what we like to divide in this country. So they're left, I'm right, right? And so we're automatically, it's hard to have conversation because if you're a left, let's say you're a left wing or a liberal, right? The information that Google and Facebook and Instagram channel towards you support that ideology, right? And it supports putting all that information in front of you so that it bolsters your ammunition, right? That you conversate with, that you battle with. And then you have somebody from the right that's the same thing. All the information they get is right-wing information, right? So then you have these two people that come to have a conversation, but the problem is their talking points are so polarized
Right.
based on the information that they give you that you believe it's true. I believe I'm right. You believe you're right because all the information we read and we get supports what we're saying. Mm-hmm. So when we start to have these conversations, I'm really not interested in what you have to say because I'm right. I've got all my info. I've done my data, my research and all that. Now, we have a lot of people that get out there and they talk and they don't have a rat's ass clue at what they're saying, but they saw a headline, right? And that's kind of another thing that goes into the brainwashing, headlines, right? Headlines, if you read them, they're almost virtually never about the story. When you get in, you dig into the story and you read about it, the headline was an eye catcher that made you form an opinion to begin with. But once you read the story, you're usually 9 times out of 10, your opinion changes about what you originally thought the headline meant. And you have to ask yourself, why do they do that? Why? Because they know everybody's attention span's like this big, right?
Yeah.
And they know that most people are going to read the headline, form a judgment call, and then they're going to move on. And then they're going to use that ammunition later on in their conversation. Well, I saw this online, and I saw this. And I think that the other thing is, like, when we question the brainwashing, how many times are we told something only to find out a month, a week, a day later, it's not true anymore, or they're changing that information, So it's kind of like the CDC comes out couple of days ago and they're like, oh, you can quarantine for 5 days now because we've got to keep the economy going. Why wasn't that important a year ago when 5 million, mom and pop businesses got shut down? Why wasn't that important when people were losing their houses because they couldn't pay their rent and they weren't getting, unemployment wasn't paying enough to keep up with the lifestyle that they've made us have because we're consumer, right? The average person in America is $70-something thousand in debt. The average family is $250,000 in debt. So how do we dig out of that, right? Yeah. Just buy more shit and hey, put it on credit because it's okay. You'll pay it back later. So I think what's really jumping out at me is that we're not dialing back to try to break things down to a very basic, simple level, right? And I think we can't do that really because society tries to make things so complicated for us, right? They try to add in so many twists and turns. And so whenever I look at something, I try to dial it back down to be basic, right? So one of the things that we were talking about is a television is what?
A tell lies vision.
Right. Tell a lie or vision, right? Or tell a vision.
Or tell a vision.
Right? Which is, we become a society that's very visual. And so we have this tube, or flat screen now, that talks to us and tells us what we should think and how we should think. Yeah. And then we have these people of great influence, like you were talking about, Hollywood, politics, and this is who we look to
form our opinion.
To form our opinions, instead of sitting back and going,
well, what do I value?
Exactly.
What do I think is important? We look to these people that we think are a certain way because of what they do on the TV screen. We form a judgment about them, and if they think that is the way that we should think, then we're going to too, because we want to be like them.
Right. We idolize them.
We idolize them
Right.
to a fault. And
We idolize them, not ourselves, not our family, not
No.
ourselves. We
Yeah.
idolize some actor or some.
and in the same token, we're also, filling their bank accounts. They're not filling ours. So we are, paying tribute to them also, not just thinking that they're great human beings and this, that, and the other. We're also paying tribute to them. And I look at kind of how our world is right now, where the left and the right is so divided. I have this analogy of these twin boys growing up in in a home with their father who's an alcoholic, and one boy grows up and he becomes an alcoholic just like his father, and one boy grows up and he's never touched the stuff. And you ask the one boy, you say, "Why did you grow up to be an alcoholic?" And he says, "Well, because my father was." And then you ask the other boy, "Why did you not become an alcoholic?" And he goes, "Because my father was." So they grew up in the same household, seeing the same thing, but they formed two totally different ideas of how they wanted to live their life. And that's exactly where we're at with the left and the right, that we are seeing the same America. We are seeing these same things on the TV, and we are hearing the same words come from our influencers, but we are getting two totally different messages. And that is what we base our opinion on, is what other people tell us to believe.
And so I think that kind of goes into the brainwashing side of it, right?
Yes.
Because, again, the information that Google and Facebook and Instagram send me is very different from what they would send you if you were from the left, right?
Right.
And so your opinion of, I'm gonna touch on something that's probably a very touchy subject, and I don't know, the cancel culture for me is what's really blowing my mind, because it's not that you can have an opinion, and it's that if your opinion doesn't match mine, I'm going to dox you. I'm going to try to get you fired from your job. I'm going to try. So we've entered into this very pivotal point in society where we're saying, if you don't believe what I believe, I'm going to exile you from society.
Yeah.
And that brings it back to, where else did they start that ended up in a really bad situation? And so what I think is really funny is history repeats itself over and over and over, right? We're the only species on Earth that will screw up and make the same mistake over and over, right?
Right.
Guilty, right? We've all done it.
Yeah.
So what I think is interesting is we're going to talk about Germany, right? Nazi Germany. They didn't throw people in the gas chamber. That's not how they started off.
No.
Right? They started off by dividing political view. They
Yeah.
started off by then, if you didn't abide by that, then you had people rat you out and tell on you. And if you didn't follow the ideology, then you were separated. So it kind of comes into this COVID thing that we're talking about, right? So it started off by, hey, we don't know what's going on. This crazy thing's out there. And we were all scared at first. I don't think there was anybody like, this is bullshit, right? And then so they started off by, it's just 2 weeks, flatten the curve, we'll be good. 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. Then it was, hey, just wear this mask. Then it was, hey, just put on 2 or 3 masks. And then it was, hey, just stand 6 feet apart.
You can't celebrate holidays together.
Yeah, now you can't get in
Can't
groups.
have funerals. Can't
Right.
have weddings.
And then so where I think a lot of people, started to question this is, you start saying, well, hey, wait a minute. Now they're in every part of my life telling me what I can and cannot do. And then what I thought was very interesting was, and we've seen this all over, there was just a deal with a lady is freaking out on this guy on the plane the other day, right?
Yes.
And she's like, put your effing mask on,
and
right?
she doesn't have one on, and she's
hers
spitting
is
on
around her neck. Her mask is down around her neck while she's screaming in the face of this guy, which I'm sure she was, projecting little spits.
No, she was actually spitting on him too.
Well, she did actually spit on
Yeah.
him. So you have this mentality of this person who, this is how brainwashed she is. The guy doesn't have a mask on, and in her mind, the right thing to do is stand up, pull her mask down, start berating this guy, screaming at him, assaulting him, and then physically spitting on him, all in the name of
Put your mask on.
Put your mask on and protect yourself from COVID.
Right.
So you have to ask yourself, if we're getting to a point where let's just say she had COVID, she just spread it to like 5 people
Right.
in that whole transaction of put your mask on.
Right.
So how do we get there? How do we get there to a point where we lose all common sense of reality in reaction to the emotion that's being embedded in us in order to follow our ideologies of what we're being taught?
And it's not like this pandemic is even over a disease like TB. Like TB is like one of the most contagious diseases out there that kills 1.5 million people a year. I mean, we're talking about a flu. We're talking about a flu that literally has a 99.97% survival rate. Like, if it was something that had a crazy amount of...
Well, let's just take it to like smallpox. If it killed 30% of the people it infected.
Right.
sense.
That's large. I mean, that's a large percentage of people that would die But this is like not even 1% of people that are dying.
I guess what goes back to that is, so now we're 2 years in, right?
Yeah.
So I think everybody out there has been affected in some way. And that's whether you've lost your business, lost your job, lost your house, lost a family member from it. You've gotten it, the whole 9 yards. So we have all these different ways. I think virtually every person on the face of the earth has been affected by this, right?
Had to have been, at least somehow.
Right. So how do we get there? And then you still go to the CDC website, right? So this is the people that we look at, and they're supposed to be the expert, which CDC is not a federal entity. It is an independent business that is funded from the pharmaceutical industry. And then you have the NIH, who Fauci Ouchie's in control of, right? Controls the largest budget, I want to say it's 4.6 billion for this and so it's like $7 billion that he controls. The NIH pays 400,000 doctor salaries, right?
Yeah.
So who's the doctors that you see on TV when they're talking about this, right? It's the NIH paid doctors. Those are the ones coming on saying you got to wear your mask, because if you're listening to them and then you go to the CDC website and you see that 2 years later, this deadly disease that was going to wipe out half the population on Earth, the numbers are still the same today as they were in the beginning.
Right.
Which we were conspiracy theorists for saying people weren't going to die and all this stuff, right?
Right.
So you have to ask yourself something. Why 2 years later, if the number's still the same? And then they also went from, if you remember, like CNN, they had the death ticker up, right?
Yeah, all the time.
And then Project Veritas had the little undercover deal where he admitted that
it was
we were using
fear.
it for fear. And he said, I almost felt bad because we would come in and we would say, how high is it today? And he said, that's really messed up,
That's
right?
really
We were
gross.
like counting on more deaths so we could raise the ratings. So how are we there that you have that? And you can, anybody in the audience, no matter what side you're for, right, left, conservative, Republican, liberal, I mean, it doesn't matter. If you go to the CDC, how do you still look at the number being less than 1% dying and still believe that we should still be losing businesses, people should still be losing their home,
Right.
kids should be isolated so much they're committing suicide at 300 times the rate?
Yeah.
How can you say that we need to put a jab into children that right now have like a 99.9% chance of survival, right?
Right.
How do you still justify that in your mind?
Or trust a single thing that a man who literally talks about eugenics and population control.
That would be Bill Gates.
That would be Bill Gates.
I think we just need to wipe out some people.
His parents were friends with Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger is the creator of Planned Parenthood. Lots of people know that. Lots of people don't. And that they literally, Margaret Sanger said that if you had one or more children, or if you had more than one child, you were irresponsible and stupid. She had 3, by the way. She had 3 children.
But she had money.
But, but she's the exception.
She had money.
They are always the exception. Always. It is always rules for thee and not for me. They do not change.
Well, so you mean
They're
kind of
so
like all the
predictable.
politicians and stuff that go
Yes.
party in Florida while telling us we should be locked down?
They're so predictable. It was the same back then as it is now. Yes, she said she had 3 children. If you had more than one child, that you were irresponsible. And she believed that if you if you were interracial, or if you had a kid that was maybe partially deformed or had something wrong, that they should be completely eliminated. Her entire goal was to eradicate the Black community. And it is still happening. Like the fact that Black women make up only 6% of our population and have remained that for over 80 years, it is because they make up 400,000 abortions a year. And that was the goal. Margaret Sanger was friends with Bill Gates' parents. That is what they wanted, population control. They wanted to have a perfect race. They wanted to have no sickness and all that stuff, but they wanted to do it by experimenting on people and controlling the population. Why are we trusting anything this person says? Like,
I'm just curious how he goes from computers to the
Yeah,
head
he's
guy of the world for everybody to listen to
Like,
about vaccines.
why does that make any sense to anybody?
And one of the things he says is, this was the best investment I've ever made. I've made 20 times more money than I invested. This was the best investment that I've ever made. And so we're going to trust a guy that tells us the reason he left the computer industry, the technology industry or whatever, and got into vaccines was because it was 20 times more profitable, right?
Of course.
And then so and now all of a sudden he's the one on MSNBC and CBS and all this telling us, just go get your vaccine. And I think what's really mind-boggling to me is that we point out these facts, right? These aren't the Margaret Sanger. This isn't our theory. These
No.
are facts. There's pictures, there's proof, there's articles, there's all kinds of things to support this, right?
Yes.
So what is it that makes the individual that, let's say, is a liberal, that when we tell them this,
Right.
they just flat out turn to rage? They don't want to hear anything that's coming out of our mouth, and then turn to attack. Why? Why is that? And my theory is it goes back to the brainwashing side, right? Because, as
the cognitive dissonance makes them
it
angry.
says a forcible indoctrination to induce someone to give up, to release, to give away their basic political or social or religious beliefs,
Yeah,
right?
and you
so
cannot-
it's like, you're going to force me by being angry. You're going to force me by coming at me. You're going to force me by want me to cower down,
Right.
so that I shut up.
Right.
But why doesn't that person ask themselves, why am I doing that?
Yep.
If she's actually pointing out something that is the truth, why am I not looking at that and saying, why did that happen? Right?
Yep. It's like talking to an alcoholic when you say, you really need to put the bottle down. And they know that they would get better if they put the bottle down, but it makes them angry. They don't want to. They won't get help until they want the help. And we call it, red pilling. You can't force someone to take the red pill. They have to be open-minded and want to know it themselves, because the cognitive dissonance is just so deep that they will never accept it until they flip a switch in their own mind and decide. They have to decide. It's the same thing with people who are drug addicts and alcoholics. They will not stop until they want to. You can lead them to water all you want, but you cannot force them to drink.
I think one of the biggest things for me is the brain. I think we all know is still such a mystery to everybody, right? And it's the most powerful computer on the face of the earth, still to date, right? And maybe not. I'm sure they maybe invented something that's more powerful. They just won't tell us yet. But with that being said, the perception of what we see changes who we are, right? So if you stick somebody, I look at some of these communist countries, right? And they finally become this just this being that's living, and they just do as they told, just so they could just live another day,
Yep.
breathe another breath of air. Although somewhere buried back in their subconscious, they weren't like that. But over time, like if you take China as an example, every piece of material they read, see, take in is about the leader,
Yep.
and about every story pertains to him. Everything, right? So what blows me away is in America, we can see that happening in Venezuela, we can see that happening in China, we can see that happening in all these different places. And we are so naive to think that, well, this is America, right?
Yeah.
So where I go with that is right now in New York City, I believe they're starting it in Baltimore. They're starting it in Chicago. They're starting it in LA.
Yep.
That you will no longer be able to enter any public place without a vaccine card.
Yep.
Right?
It's already happened in New York for sure because my friend just went there.
Right.
And
people are getting arrested for
Yep.
literally sitting in
People
a
are getting
restaurant,
arrested.
eating a meal without being vaccinated, right?
Yep.
So we go through this whole 2 years where we are interacting in restaurants and grocery stores. Now, you can go in Walmart and you can't pass COVID, right? Because you can have 10,000 people in Walmart and, you just, for some reason, it doesn't travel in Walmart, right?
Yeah, it doesn't.
And then you
it's
can...
the smartest disease I've
Yeah,
ever
it's very
known.
smart. Like, it just doesn't cross the door.
Yeah.
I think the greeter blocks it. is
Yeah,
what is.
it follows arrows. It follows standing and sitting procedures.
And,
It's the
and
smartest
then you had
disease.
and then you had all these major companies that stayed open. So every fast food joint does not transmit COVID, right? They can work and they don't pass it. So when I look at stuff like that, and when you look back at what happened in Nazi Germany, and now you're going to have a gold star, right, to go in somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so and then I see comments from a lot of people from our viewpoint that say, well, they better not come to Texas. Let me tell you, or they better not come to Florida, or that ain't happening here.
Right.
So what you have to understand is that they can't wake up one day and just turn everything off, right?
No,
they
it
have to
has
do it in segments,
Yeah,
right?
everything
So if
is
they
very
start
slow.
in these more liberal areas where they're more willing to cave in and give in to what their ideology, political leaders, or athletes, or anybody tells them to do, they're going to go for those areas first,
Yep.
right? And once they subdue those, then they look at places like Texas and Florida and they say, why can't you act like them? And then they start demonizing the way we're living,
Right.
because we're not living like they are,
Yeah.
right? So then we're the bad people.
It's the pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Right. So now every time you turn on your TV, every time you look online, it's, this person wouldn't wear their mask, or this person got thrown off a plane because they weren't wearing a mask, or this person got thrown out of a restaurant because they weren't vaccinated. And what's really crazy to me is that we're not how people are buying so hard into that when all they have to do is pull up CDC, look at the numbers, and say, wow, it's
Yep.
the same today
Yep.
as it was 24 months ago.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed globally.
No.
You have places like Australia that is unrecognizable.
Yeah.
You have places like Austria that are...
It's going back to the same exact
It's
thing.
going back to... Australia, they can't leave their house.
Yeah.
They can't leave their home. Like,
We're taking their kids from their houses.
now, why did they go for Australia first? I think because it's an island, nobody can get to it, and they can't get away.
Oh,
right?
well, and they did the the bill the buyback program, relinquish your guns and we'll give you money for it. So they're unarmed. They have nothing to protect themselves with. They cannot fight against tyranny. They can't.
And we'll get into that on another podcast, because I'm going to tell you the Second Amendment is something they're coming for.
Yeah.
They do realize that in this country that this would be the hardest one to take over in the whole world.
Yeah.
And they realize that because the same reason that they didn't invade us after World War II
Yeah.
is because, they said they have a gun behind every blade
Every
of
blade of grass.
right?
Yeah. I
So
think
they
that's
know
why
that
they started going for our minds.
That's right. So that's exactly correct.
Yeah.
So that's why they're into the brainwashing, because they realize if they can change people's perspective, right?
Yeah.
Their thought process on something, they're going to be a lot easier to control.
Yeah.
And so again, I think that the one of the things to kind of bring this thing to an end is I try to break things down to be basic. And if you look at government, right? What does govern mean?
To hold power over.
Yeah, to control.
Yeah.
Right? Govern is control.
Yeah.
Govern is to, you do it this way, we govern you and we tell you how to do it. And then ment for government or governmental is mind.
Yeah.
So literally the people that are in charge of us,
It's literally
the
called
word
mind
government or governmental means to control the mind.
Yes.
Right? And then
Yep.
we watch the tell-lie-vision or tell-a-vision, and then we get all this stuff embedded in us. And then you look at everything from TV to music to everything. What has happened with TV and music over the last 20 years? Has it gotten more rich with so I have a subscription to PureFlix, right, which is Christian-based movies and all this stuff. So everything you go on there is very, it sometimes there's rough stuff on there, but it leads to a very positive wholeness, a very good outcome that you get done watching that movie, and it makes you feel better.
Right.
It makes you feel better about who you are.
Yep.
It makes you feel better about your outlook on who others are. It makes you feel better to see that they can change, they could come to a better outcome. And then you turn on your TV and you got soft porn and violence, and you listen to your music and it's F this, F that, drugs, ladies, sex, all that. Oh, that's all it is. And, I tell people, I joke with people a lot about, country music is because I listen to country music, right? And I listen to rap and I listen to all of it. But I always said it all talks about the same thing.
Yeah.
Country just puts it in a nicer way.
Right.
Because they're like, you still go to the bar, you get the chick drunk and you take her home, right?
Exactly.
But, it's just said in a different terminology.
Exactly.
So I think it's interesting that we're in a society where we can literally, we know our government means control of the mind. We know that the stuff we're seeing is horrible. We know that the information we're being fed is divisive. Mm-hmm. We know that we're seeing more division now than I've ever seen in my life, right? And I'm a lot older than you. So,
and what's funny about most of the division, started with the 2016 election of Donald Trump, and I remember not too long ago, who you voted for was very private. That was very secretive information. You don't just go around telling everybody who you voted for. There wasn't a whole lot of bumper stickers with who you voted for, and it was a private matter. So I don't know where that switched.
Well, I think the reason that it switched is because now that's an identifier, and with that being an identifier, then they can create more division, because when you see that Trump hat, you go beat the shit out of that person like that's happening. Or you see a Biden sticker and somebody kicks the car and puts a dent in it, which we've seen both sides, right?
Yeah,
so
we have.
I'm not saying that one side's better than the other, because you can't do what you're saying is bad and then call yourself a good person, right? So I think what we really need to do as society is we need to take a step back from attacking each other. I think that we really need to look at what's being done to us, because at the end of the day, all of us are going to end up in the same boat, right?
Yeah.
The Bill Gates, the Warren Buffetts, those guys, the Jeff Bezoses, the Elon Musk, and I'm not saying they're all bad or anything. I'm just saying all of those people will end up in this realm up here, right? In this private island and this, $20 million home that's stuffed with stuff to live for 50 years. And then we're going to be down here with nothing.
Yeah.
And that's every one of us. That's left, right, conservative, liberal, straight, gay, all the stuff they use to pit us against each other.
Yep.
Is we're all going to be in the same bottom pool, right? Mm-hmm. And we're all going to suffer together.
Yeah.
So the one thing that we have that they don't have is we have numbers, right? We have strength in numbers, right? So if we don't pick up on that and we let the division continue and the brainwashing continue, then what's going to happen is we're going to take each other out for them, right?
Yeah.
And then we're going to eliminate one side of society for them, and then they're going to eliminate the other side.
Yep.
When they get to what they want, right?
Right.
You could call it a conspiracy theory, which, by the way, that word came up after JFK was assassinated. Weird, it had never been around prior to that.
And it was formed by the CIA.
Formed by the CIA. And quite interestingly, so many people don't believe that he was assassinated the way he was.
Right.
They do believe it to be some form of government involvement. But, again, it goes back to the control of the mind. And we're not liberating ourselves from their control. We're digging our heels in. And again, not just the left, the right too.
Yeah.
Right. We're digging our heels in on certain ideologies, and we're not letting go.
No.
So to me, we need to get rid of how do you get rid of that? How do you get rid of their control?
The second that we realize that it's not us against each other, it's us against them, that's when I think people will start asking the right questions. It's not a, why are you not wearing your mask? It's a, why are we wearing a mask? Why are we doing this still? Like everybody, I don't remember a single person in the beginning not willing to try. I mean, we stayed home, and I'm a big anti-masker now, but we stayed home. We did our part. We wore the mask. We did it for 7-8 months. And not a single person around me or in my circle or people that I talked to were anti-maskers or anti-vaxxers or whatever you want to call it. I'm still not even anti-vaxxer.
How many vaccines have you had?
I've had all of my vaccines. I am just anti.
You mean you weren't against every vaccine in the world?
No, I've had, and guess what? My kids have all had their vaccines too.
No.
Yeah. So I'm not anti-vaxxer. I'm anti-forced vaccination. You're not going to force me to do something, to go have a meal at a restaurant or to go shop at a store. No. But you know what is funny though? None of this stuff surprises me. It's all in the Bible. It tells us that this is coming. It tells you that if you do not conform, that you will be exiled from society. It says that. So,
well, but then you're going religious. And you can't be
I
doing
know,
that,
super religious. It's like, the Bible is one of the biggest conspiracies, right? But how many times does it get it wrong? It has prophesied. It has prophecies that have all come true. Over 200 prophecies in the Bible, and they all come true. All of them.
But not if the powers to be want to tell you they didn't, right?
Yeah, right.
I think it really comes down to what we need to do in society is we need to learn how to have dialect again. We need to learn how to have a conversation with our neighbor.
Yeah.
We bury ourselves in our homes, and we, guilty. Pinky Blinders episode 9 one day. We're guilty of putting ourselves in these states of mind that are just not productive for anything about our life, right? We were born a free spirit. We were born an individual. We were born to live this life of just curiosity and seeing things from all different points of view. And yet often we end up living in the same town. We live in the same house.
Yeah.
We get up and we do the same thing every day, which is we go work for some elite to make them a bunch of money so that they live a much grander life than we do. And, I hear this from the right a lot. I just want to get up and earn a living. I don't. I mean, I want a hell of a lot more to life than just getting up and earning a living. I mean, there's nothing against hardworking Americans. I'm not saying that. Yeah. I don't think we were born to spend 10 hours a day in somebody else's shit building their fortune.
Yeah.
Just don't think that was what we were.
I don't think I was born to pay bills.
Yeah. So we've been entrapped into this into this life style that
the American dream.
The American dream, right? Which is American bullshit.
Yeah.
And I'll get a lot of hate from that from any side.
Yeah.
But the American dream is a crock of shit. It's to get up and work your life away, to knuckle to bone, ignore your family, have, terrible personal relationships at the cost of a job so that you make somebody else rich. It's just ludicrous, right?
We live for weekends.
There's only one way out of it, right? And one thing controls everything. Mm-hmm. Money, right? If you don't have it, But what if we just didn't give any value to money? Right? What if just everybody woke up tomorrow, did kind of the same thing? We became more of a sustainable society and focused more on just taking care of each other, making gardens, whatever it is. I don't know. I don't have the answers to all of it. But what if we just did? And what if we told the elites, like, kiss our ass? Like, we're not not coming to work for you tomorrow.
No.
So if, like, you have a company like I don't know. I'm not going to name a company because I'll probably get sued. But let's just say you have a company with 50,000 employees that woke up tomorrow and said, "Fuck, I'm not going in.
Yeah.
I'm not going in. None of us are going to go in."
Yeah.
How much power does that elite have? Right? How much power will he have a week from then when his gazillion dollars in bills are still coming in, but none of his money's coming in?
Yeah.
Right? We could literally bankrupt the elites by all staying home.
Yeah. We could.
Staying home
We
and
could.
not buying their shit. That's
Right.
the other thing. Stay home and don't buy their shit.
And that's the thing is people don't get is when COVID happened, no big corporation suffered.
They gained.
They gained.
Yeah.
Like my Nebraska Furniture Mart, they gained like $9 billion overhead.
Yeah.
Several other Fortune 500 companies, none of them lost a penny.
I believe the number was in the first 6 months of COVID, $5.7 trillion transferred from middle class to the elites.
Yeah.
Which is an example of what you're saying. So everybody got their COVID checks, everybody got their government assistant checks, and then they turned around and they bought shit on Walmart, Amazon, Nebraska Furniture Mart, and gave them all that money, and then now they just have shit sitting in their house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm guilty. I've got like a whole garage full of shit, right?
Because we sat home and we didn't know what to do, but sit on our phones and consume, whether it be information, whether it be more propaganda in TV, whether it be the news or whether it be materialistic shit. We sat home for a year and consumed. We did what they have taught us to do, which was consume. And for a lot of people, I think it helped. I know it helped me. I didn't realize.
Are you saying it woke you up?
It woke me up, like hard.
Yeah.
To the point where my family thought that I was going nuts.
Well, because life is kind of a movie that we've been getting played for us. And
Yeah.
once you wake up and you start realizing it, it's a very hard thing to digest. And I think that's another reason that a lot of people don't want to have these dialect conversations about the things that conspiracy theorists talk about is because it busts open your reality and it really shows you that this world is not as pretty as we think it is.
Yeah.
And this country is not as amazing as it's been made out to be.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people in power that abuse it daily for their gain, financial, for social gain or whatever, that do it at our expense. And
Right.
nobody wants to feel like they've been used,
No,
right? Nobody
no.
wants to admit that they've been used.
It's like finding out that the love of your life has been cheating on you behind your back. That's what it's like. It's that betrayal that, oh no, they could never do that to me. I do so much for them. I love them. I do this, that, and the other. But that doesn't matter. That's why they took advantage of you. That's exactly why they took advantage of you. And so nobody wants to wake up to that reality. So waking up to it is one of the hardest but best things I have ever done. I knew I wasn't depressed, but I knew I wasn't happy about finding out this stuff. But it took months of digesting what the crap am I living in.
Because you almost feel like you're going crazy when you start reading
do. You feel insane. You feel like there is no way that I could not see this stuff. There's no way. It was right in front of my face.
Right.
How did I not see it?
Right.
So you feel stupid. You feel like, wait, I'm a total.
What's that word? Chump? You feel like a chump?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I'm so lucky that I had somebody that was waking up with me. Luckily I had my husband. Some people are doing it alone. And so they're like, their families are like totally cutting them out of their lives. And, I've had many conversations of people that have contacted me about it. And I'm just like, I couldn't imagine. Thank God I had my husband.
Right.
And a few people that were willing to at least listen. But it was hard. It was very, very hard. And I definitely am glad I did it, but I don't want to do it again.
Just one thing to kind of close us down is that you have to ask yourself, forget about your political alignment. Forget about if you're a man or a woman. Forget about if you're straight or gay. Forget about every title that begins to be put on us as soon as we're born, right? And just forget, just put all of that shit aside. And dial it back to what's happening right now, right? And ask yourself, why is one side of the ideology that's happening, that is the most aggressive, the most violent, the most hatred, the most polar-driven mentality, why is that allowed to continue to be on social media? How come somebody can get on there and wish somebody that has chosen not to take the vaccine for their personal choice? Because if you take it, you're supposed to be okay. So if I didn't take it, why in the world does that bother you?
Yeah, why do you care?
Because you took it. You saved yourself. So what do you care?
Yeah.
Why are you allowed to get on social media and wish that I die and say, I hope you die. I hope your family dies. I hope your kids die, because that's been said to me on social media.
Right.
And when I report that, social media finds no violation of community standards.
No.
But if we get on and talk about a news clip from CNN, we get our accounts banned.
Yep.
Why are you seeing one side be silenced and not the other, right?
Because
And
it's
you
pushing
have to-
their agenda.
It's brainwashing, right? Because if we get you to believe one side, you will eliminate the other side for us. And then once you do, then we'll come for you, because there'll be a lot less of you to deal with, right?
Yep.
So I think that pretty much brings to the end. We'll have another episode. Always great talking to you. I'm sure we'll come up with a lot of conspiracy theories to talk to folks about. And our goal here isn't to pick a side. Our goal here isn't to make you see it our way. It's just to get you to open up your mind, get you to stop and ask yourself some very difficult questions, and strip away what everybody else is telling you to say, telling you to feel, telling you to look at it, and start critically thinking for yourself. You don't even have to buy into what we're saying. Just open your mind up. Because our goal at Let's Kiss is Keep It Simple, Stupid America, invoking critical thinking, one thought, one question, or one rant at a time.